to part two of the week 6 online lecture. I mentioned press conferences briefly in the first part, so I'm just going to talk a bit more about press conferences now. So there are occasions when someone with something to say, which they believe is newsworthy, calls reporters together so that they can tell them all at once. So the person calling the press conference usually makes an announcement or statement, then allows reporters to ask questions. And like I said earlier, you'll have seen plenty of examples of these on the news. Quite often breaking news stories, say there's been a murder or something like that, and then a few hours later you'll get called to a press conference where a bit more information will be put out, and you will, as a reporter, get the opportunity to put questions to the person who's put up there, or in the case of the government briefings during the pandemic, because they were all remote, then reporters were asking questions via Zoom or things like that. And quite often nowadays they're streamed online, and like I say, particularly over the last 18 months or so. So organisations use press conferences and indeed press releases to draw the attention of the media to a potential story or provide reaction to a current story. So you do get, if you're on a news desk, you do get quite a lot of, invitations to press conference and things like that. The police ones, usually certainly try and attend either in person or online, and you get some from companies as well, and then it's down to the judgment of the news editor or indeed a reporter whether they're worthy of attending, if they're a big enough story. Otherwise, if you can't attend, you can usually set up a phone interview with the person concerned. So they're often used, like I say, for emergencies, appeals, political campaigns and promotional purposes. So pretty useful vehicles for journalists to pick up stories from. So it can be an appeal for information, which can often be impromptu, so can often come around pretty quickly, really. Introducing a new product, so again, use your own judgment whether that's newsworthy enough for you to attend, or you could ask them to send a press release, and you can then follow that up with a phone interview or something like that if you deem it newsworthy. So you do have to sift through quite a few of these press conference offers. Sometimes you can reveal a scientific breakthrough. These can be pretty interesting. Unveiling a new advertising campaign, less interesting. Announcing a charity event with a featured celebrity, yeah, they're worthy of note, depending who the celebrity is. If it's a David Beckham or someone like that, you'd want to go. Releasing company financial statements, if you're the business editor of the Manchester Evening News or Liverpool Echo or the BBC, then something you'll be keeping a particular eye on. And it can be also about launching a new political campaign, either locally, regionally or nationally, and promoting political propaganda as well. Want to keep an eye on that is. Okay, the person calling the press conference usually makes an announcement or statement first, then invites reporters to ask questions. So you'll get a media invite like the one you can see on the screen. In this case, it's Assistant Chief Constable Russ Jackson will be available to read a statement in relation to the incident at Manchester Arndale Centre today. He'll take questions at the end, but these are not to be recorded. Please register your attendance with the press officer. So that's fairly typical invite that you'll get through, and then, like I say, you assess the information and then decide whether it's worth you attending. In this case, there's been a serious incident at the Arndale Centre, so if I'd have been on the MEN news desk, I'd definitely be sending a reporter down to that to find out a bit more, because presumably we would have already done a holding story, or might be running a live blog, depending what the incident is. Okay, and this is an invite for an online one, like I say, which we've seen quite a bit more of over the last 18 months in particular. So you'll be sent a link, being held on Teams, and there might be, 10 or 20 journalists there, and they operate in the same manner as a face-to-face press conference. Really, not as good, but it's better than nothing basically, and you have to adapt depending on the circumstances. Just an example of the daily press briefings that we've seen over the last 18 months. Less frequent now as the pandemic's moved on a bit, but I think we'll probably see more of these over the winter as things develop. So if you get a chance, tune into one of those and just have a think about what sort of questions the various journalists are putting to the ministers and the scientific advisors. They've been pretty good, actually. And try and do a bit of a critique, actually, the questions that the journalists are asking, because I've been a bit frustrated by some of the questioning, because the questions are sometimes longer than the answers. So short and sweet was always sort of my mantra when doing interviews, but sometimes you do have to elaborate a bit more. But just have a little critique of the journalists as they're asking their questions. Okay, so that's enough about press conferences and things like that. But like I say, take the opportunity to have a look at some that are on TV. Quite often, featured on 6 o'clock news. If there's been something like the murder of David Amess a week or so, a couple of weeks ago, there were a couple of press conferences held after that, which were featured on TV. And Sky, if you go on Sky News or one of the news channels, BBC News, they'll often carry them in full. Whereas in the 6 o'clock news, you might just get snippets, the best bits. So there you go. Okay, it's the end of part 2.